As it's correct for the season box set,
As long as it's correct. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. It has been a while. I don't think I've uploaded anything for over 3 months at this point. There's no reason for that other than just being really busy with work and family and a little bit of not being inspired to make any videos about anything specifically. But as of recording this right now, it's bank holiday in the UK, so I've got the day off. And I thought I would, last night, I reached out to Davey and said, what are you doing tomorrow? Have you got a little bit of time for us to record a soft focus, just so we can catch up personally and also just to put something out there and just chat about some films? So that's what we're going to do. So, Davey, would you like to kick things off with your pick of a physical media release that you would like to discuss today with our viewers?
Do you not want to go first for a change? You never go first.
No, I'm not going first. It's always guests first.
So boring. Everybody does that. Oh no, you first. You first. I like selfishness. It's a very it's underrated trait. But regardless, today I'm going to talk about. I was going to talk about sexting and see if I can get you taken off of YouTube. We're not going to talk about sexting.
You can talk about sex demon if you want. I mean, I might be fairly quiet about it. you can take the floor if you want to.
You told me about it.
I did. It's a good film. I enjoyed it.
It's just not quite as romantic as you'd imagine from that title. Sex Demon. So I'll be talking about 1967's The Sorcerers, which I've always really liked this film since the first time I saw it. It's been out 1.5 million times. Here's one of the previous editions from Odeon Entertainment in the Michael Reeves box set, which I loved Odeon, or what did they rebrand as? Screenbound, wasn't it? They were a bit cheeky. They called this the complete Michael Reeves. Yeah, if you miss out one of his films entirely, So that set didn't have Radiance have just released Revenge of Blood Beasts, but it did have Castle of the Living Dead, which he didn't actually direct, he only wrote. But his biggie is obviously Witchfinder General, and it overshadows his career. So it's a bit unfortunate because he died at 26, I think it was. No, 25. Yeah, 25. And Witchfinder General is pretty much what he's remembered for, with nothing else really, unless you're a real kind of vintage horror hound. But to me, The Sorcerers is a film that, yeah, it's not Witchfinder General, but it deserves to be remembered a lot more than it is. So I'm glad that 88 Films have given it this deluxe edition. Nice, breezy plot, nothing too convoluted, but it's high concept enough to be interesting. Boris Karloff and his wife are extremely old at this point, hence being Boris Karloff in 1967. And he's a professor who's invented this machine that does a thing. Rather sinister, kind of opening to the film. And he's coaxing young men back to his house. And there's some rather wonderful subtones to that. So he's literally going out cruising for young men.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just a funny reading of it. That's what he does. His wife says, "Oh, you need to go out and get some young boys and bring them back." He's going, "Yes, I shall tell them about the wonders they can find with this machine." You don't know what the machine does yet, so it might be a sex thing for all you know. It's not a sex thing. So Boris Karloff goes out, finds this young man, brings him back to the house, and puts him in this machine, and this machine infects him with psychedelia. Basically, it just puts this strobe lighting effect and turns it into the UFO Club in 1967, where just crazy lights start going and crazy effects. And the effect of the machine is, which again is not revealed for maybe about half an hour into the film, Boris Karloff and his wife can now pick up on any sensation that the young man feels. So when he, first of all, you think it's just mind control. So they can make him walk, go to the left, go to the fridge, pick up an egg, blah, blah, blah. sinister enough. But then you realise they can actually feel everything that he feels. So when he's washing his hands, they can feel the water in their hands, this old couple. And it's very economical filmmaking, because essentially the plot of it is that they discover this technology off screen before the film even starts, the old couple, Boris Karloff, with the wonderful name of Dr. Montserrat. So Malcolm Montserrat is a double N. Something Montserrat. It's definitely Malcolm or Michael Montserrat. And he's discovered this technology, invented it before the film even starts, and he's now going to try it out for the first time about half an hour into the film. When the film kicks in with that, he picks up our young man here, Ian Ogilvy, from Witchfinder General. He was in all of Michael Reed's films. And really, the film rather succinctly finds a way to go with that premise of what can we do with, we've got Boris Karloff, who in 1967 was Donald Duck. He could not move. If he lifted his eyebrow, he'd break his hip. I mean, he was just decrepit, really. I mean, this is long after The Raven, and he couldn't walk down the flight of stairs in The Raven. He had to do an edit in Roger Corman's The Raven. So this is years after that. So Boris Karloff can't move. So what value does he bring to the film? Well, everything that he does, really, after this initial cruising scene is at the kitchen table, basically. Right, so you'd think, well, that's crap. There's not going to be much of him in that. No, there's loads of it. There's absolutely loads of Boris Karloff and his wife. So they send this young guy back out into the world because they realise that he now obviously can pick up all this feeling, the century thing, and they can live vicariously through him. So it starts to become this kind of metaphor for old people getting their kicks.
All right.
And how they've kind of been forgotten by society. And how it's a kind of way of doing the fighting a youth thing without being so cheesy about it. So Boris Karloff and his wife, if you just watch their scenes, all you see is two old people just sitting in the living room going, it's really cheesy. But when you edit it nice and tightly, like the film does, with whatever Ian Ogilvy's character is up to, it becomes quite chilling to think that they're stealing his feelings, really. They're using him like a puppet to get these feelings. So they go from initially just enjoying living vicariously through him, through whatever he does, to manipulating him to do things just so they can get that feeling and just so they can experience. I mean, I don't want to go into spoilers and whatnot, but essentially they start to manipulate them so that they can feel things that they've not been able to feel in a long time. And again, it doesn't go down the predictable route, because that is something you'd imagine, well, we'll have a sex scene then, and we'll see what the old couple are like when that's happening. There is a sex scene in the film, but we don't get to see Boris Karloff and his wife at that point. So it doesn't go down the kind of slazier route that you could do with this kind of thing. It goes down the more tragic route of what would this actually be like for this young man who's now not in control of his own life, and what's it also like for this old couple who haven't had much of an existence for the last, we pick up through dialogue that's drip into the film. They've not had much of a life for about 30 years since Boris Karloff was called a quack for previous experiments. We're not really told what they might be, but it's Boris Karloff, so they're probably some kind of mad professor-like stuff.
Yeah.
But he starts to become a more sympathetic figure, Boris Karloff, whereas his wife, is shown on the cover here, played by Catherine Lacey, you can just about see there, she starts to become the real manipulator of things. So you're conditioned, because this is a Boris Karloff film, and he's got a funny name, to think he must be the bad guy. He's got to be up to no good here. And actually, he's quite sympathetic. He just wants to feel things again. And it's his wife who's actually the monster pulling his strings, even though Boris Karloff is pulling Ian Ogilvy's strings. So it's kind of chain of events about power plays and control. But it's all set against the swinging 60s backdrop. But it's a very truthful version of the swinging 60s. So it's not Austin Powers. But there is a scene, or quite a few scenes set in a nightclub where, yeah, everybody does look kind of groovy and they look like they're members of the Small Faces. Great get-ups, and everybody's talking about doing bennies and smoking some explicit material and whatnot. They go to a burger joint late at night and it's a wimpy. If that doesn't date the film, I don't know what does. And that's where Boris Karloff picks him up. And believe me, there's no doubt about it that they knew this was a kind of take on cruising for young guys, because when Boris Karloff goes to pick Ian Ogilvy up, the dialogue is exactly like an old guy picking up a rent boy. It works exactly that way. So they're not being too sci-fi with it. They're doing it as a realistic take on what this would actually be like if you had a machine in which you could control people's actions without them knowing, and also experience what they feel through their touch and their taste. So if he drinks a glass of wine, they can taste the wine in their throat. There's a few jumps in logic, as there has to be. I mean, how can you possibly experience everything? What happens to your own experiences once you're doing this? Can you experience two things at the same time if they're diametrically opposed? Blah, blah, blah. Again, don't think about it too much. It's an hour and 25 minutes. You're not supposed to really worry about that kind of thing. So, I mean, the back of the box describes it as Marcus Montserrat, by the way, as a strange science fiction scarefest guaranteed to send creeps up the spine. I don't think it is. I don't think that does it justice, actually. They are launching this line, or have launched it, of Tygon Films and Planet Films and things. So I think they've written that copy to try and sell it to people as, hey, if you like the Body Snatchers, try this. If you like it.
Right.
Whereas, no, this is a much more cerebral film than that. This is, believe it or not, closer to Alfie than it is to that kind of film. It feels like just a mid-60s drama that happens to have one really fantastical element in it. And Boris Karloff plays it like he's in Targets. He's playing it completely straight.
Okay.
He's not playing he's playing it very, no, I'm an old, dignified man living in a dingy bed set in London. And that's what I appreciated too. They didn't go for the Peter Cushing's house and corruptions, a big swinging pads and things like this. No, they live in just a dingy little bed set in this. So it's again a kind of grounded, realistic take. Just like Witchfinder General could have been a very over-the-top, silly film, but it's a very grounded, quote-unquote, realistic take on what that kind of film would be. So it's kind of hard to go into the last act without spoilers. You can probably extrapolate enough to imagine where it goes. But Ian Ogilvy, who would again be in all of Michael Reeves' films and then go on to Upstairs, Downstairs, and he would be the Saint in The Return of the Saint, taking over from Roger Moore. Bizarre career. He ended up doing like Babylon 5 and stuff. Baywatch, I think he was in an episode of Baywatch. Still going at the age of 212. He's on the extras here. Still looks great. And he's got it could be a very one-note role here, because again, he's just a swinging kid on the streets. No, he's actually very entertaining. He's very suave. It's kind of his shtick anyway, but he's very good. Some of the supporting actors are pretty dodgy, but again, this is the first real feature from an emerging director who was only 23. And at the age of 23, he's already directing Boris Karloff and was just about to direct Vincent Price. So, yeah, I think this is a fascinating, it's a sci-fi, but it's a very grounded take on sci-fi. So, people buying it because 88 are doing Island of Death, for example, no, it's not that kind of film at all. Don't buy it thinking it's going to be some B movie from the 60s, which is, camp fun. It's not that. It's quite a grim, dark little story. Which, highly, highly recommended. Full of the kind of extras that you'd imagine this kind of thing would attract. There's an audio commentary from Kim Newman and Sean Hogan, which is good, but again, Sean Hogan doesn't need to be there because Kim Newman just does what Kim Newman often does and takes over the commentary, unfortunately. A better commentary from William Fowler and Vic Pratt, who talk about a lot of the themes and whatnot. Kim Newman's one's more, hey, look, there's Wimpy, remember Wimpy? Let's talk about Wimpy for 3 minutes, that kind of thing. Not great. Ian Ogilvy does an interview talking about this film specifically, which is great because most of the time when he's interviewed, it's just to talk about which kind of general or the set. So yeah, it's not any kind of 10 out of 10 classic. Do you have that?
Yep. Very loud.
So that's Peter Fonda, the biker guy. So it's not any kind of 10 out of 10 classic that's going to rock anybody's world. What it is, though, is a kind of fascinating one-off mid-60s British film that's like nothing else. It feels like, again, Michael Caine and Alfie, but with a sci-fi twist, which, what?
Yeah.
Michael Reeve, fascinating filmmaker. He'd be dead within 18 months after making this. So who knows what he could have done. I mean, he might have gone on to nothing, but he'd make The Sorcerers and Witchfinder General and then Pauper's Clogs. So, I don't know, it's not a bad start to your career. Unfortunately, it was also the end of his career.
Yeah.
But, yeah, recommended for a specific audience. And actually, the audience that I would recommend it to, again, aren't just the sci-fi or horror hounds. I'd actually be wary of recommending it to them. It's actually people that are maybe more interested in British film of the 60s, Richard Lester kind of films and whatnot. I think this has got a place amongst general British film of the 60s, rather than just genre film.
Love it. That was, you waxed poetically about that to make me want to pick it up. That was very interesting. I like I like films when they are grounded in reality and then they just have a slight skew of sci-fi, but the focus and the sci-fi is just more used to push the narrative in a way that, you know, serves the story, but it's not the focus of it. And obviously that the way you excuse me, the way you just sold that sounds exactly like that. So
the sci-fi machine is a bunch of 8-tracks and tape recorders and buttons and doohickeys just in a room. It's used once and then it's never used again.
Right.
So the sci-fi element happens just to set up the premise and then you're away. That's it. Everything after that is just the consequences of what's been done. So yeah, there's a lot of allegory. There's a lot of fun cheese to it when it gets to the more swinging 60s side, but again, it never goes too heavily into that. Although he does, unironically, at one point listen to Cliff Richard, which is probably the last time you could do that in a film without doing it with a bit of an ironic twist. But no, he's listening to "Out in the Country" by Uncle Cliff. Yeah, just a lovely little film, which I'm so glad that it's, you know, even though I've kind of criticised the slight marketing of it, I'm kind of glad that it crept into a lot of collections like a Trojan horse.
Yeah.
So people won't know that they're buying a film that's not actually a big horror film. It's actually a subdued drama film in a lot of ways.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Davey. I'm going to talk about film now. And I can't remember if you said you've seen this one or not, but
is it the one from Mondo Macabro?
It is one from Mondo Macabro. Yeah, so I'm talking about The Curse of the Dog God from Mondo Macabro. This is a Japanese film from 1977, directed by Shunya Ito, who probably people are most. I'm gonna put this down, so I'm not holding it up for too long. Probably most familiar with. Yeah, you just pose like that, like a statue for me. Shunya Ito directed the Female Prisoner Scorpion series, at least the first 3 or 4 films, maybe the first 3 films. And he made Toei a lot of money with those films, but he was also a bit. It was a bit of an odd situation because he made films that were very good. You know, I think the Female Prisoner Scorpion series is fantastic. It was also very popular in Japan and made a lot of money, so it was like a win-win situation. But he liked to creep in a lot of political or social commentaries into his films and into those three films that were sort of like disparaging of patriarchal society in Japan, which is a good thing. But obviously the patriarchy in Japan at the time didn't like it so much, and the film industry basically sort of not blackballed him, but that he just basically didn't get an opportunity to make another film after he made those three Female Prisoner Scorpion films for like for 4 or 5 years or so. Just because he was sort of like low-key punished for like, no, you thought you were cheeky, like getting in these like social commentary themes into these like exploitation films. We don't like that, so basically you're not making anything. And then when he does return, he makes, I think this was his return, but then he makes The Curse of the Dog God, which is like the first time I ever heard of this was on the All Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched documentary. So I'd never heard of the film before that. I didn't know that Shinya Ito had really done much outside of the Female Prisoner Scorpion series. I don't know why I never looked, but I just knew him as that. And I think a lot of other people just know him for those films, really. But I heard about this on that documentary. As a lot of us who'd watched that documentary may have had a lot of films brought to our attention, or may have been like heard a little bit about them, but like actually to see like some clips from them and stuff like that was like really eye-opening, and it got on my radar. And then Mondo Macabro put this out late last year.
And
was
it only that? It feels a bit longer than that now.
Yeah, because it was in a bundle package with Inferno. Which I watched immediately when it came, and then for some reason this one I just didn't feel inspired to watch it. I definitely was inspired enough to buy it, but sometimes the mood has to strike. I've said this many times, and sometimes things can be left on your shelf for a bit. But the mood struck me a few nights ago, and I thought, I'm going to watch this right now. And it is very much a folk-ish horror. I wouldn't say it's not a very stereotypical sort of folk horror film. It has a lot of leanings into different genres. It's also like an environmental he was like put his social commentary into his Female Scorpion films. He puts like environmental, like I don't know what to say, like the film, let's just go with the plot, and then we can go from there. So three environmental scientists are basically looking to find uranium up in like a mountain area somewhere in Japan. I don't know if it's specifically mentioned where it is, but it's out in the middle of like the mountain area, and on their sort of search and hunt for this uranium, they smash a shrine to a dog god in the local area. And shortly after this, when they're like fleeing the scene, so to speak, they run over a dog, this young boy's dog, and the three men are basically like cursed, and it has a lot to do with like the unification of Japan and stuff, because there was a lot of different regions that had lot of beliefs, a lot of animalistic sort of spiritualism and things like that, and they try to bring the country together, and they're still like under one sort of as one people, so all like write the same language and all have the same religion and stuff. And so there's still pockets up in rural areas that are still in the old ways and stuff. So the film has some commentary on that as well. And then the film sort of starts to delve into sort of the occult, and this came out obviously after The Exorcist, and there's like an exorcism parallel. It's very tenuous, but I can definitely see where this link is, because there's like an exorcism scene, which I kind of found a bit hilarious. It's very over the top and eccentric. I think it's supposed to be, but I found it quite humorous, but definitely entertaining. And the dog god is sort of inhabiting various different a woman, and primarily, who is married to one of these people that, you know, smashed this shrine previously, and she gets like overtaken by this dog god and goes insane, and then she dies, and then it's just how the community is like conflicting with one another, not just sort of like the city people that are coming to mine or the uranium, but also the conflict within the rural community as well. So there's like a really cool sense that it's not a black and white situation of like morality, because there's even within the people who you would say are morally right in the rural communities, there's still conflict within them, which I found really interesting. So it wasn't just like cut and paste, like these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. There's a lot of moral ambiguity, and just who should we be rooting for here? And yeah, I absolutely love this. There's got a lot of really interesting imagery, a lot of like in places when sort of the more surreal horror elements, when people are like possessed by the dog god. There's like the gel lighting. You could say it's like Bava-esque lighting if you want to. It's probably not quite like that, but there's like spotlights of certain colors like shine on people's faces and stuff like that to like emphasize a mood. And the last 20 minutes of this film are nuts in a really cool way. It's very surreal and very just goes off the wall, as a lot of some of these like 70s Japanese. Says there are exploitation bits in this, but I wouldn't label this as just like an all out and out exploitation film. There is bits of nudity in it and some sex and things like that, but it's all intertwined with this sort of story about the old and the new world colliding, and also the environmental factors that are put into it, because there had been lots of like situations in recent Japanese history to this film where like there'd been environmental disasters with like water supplies being poisoned and things like that. And yeah, I've just loved it. And you say you've seen this one, Davey?
Yeah, I thought it was too long.
Okay, I thought it was very well paced, personally.
Yeah, I thought it was too long. So the opening is the most supernatural part about it, definitely the most folk horror part about it. But you're right, there's folk horror in it, but I don't think it's a folk horror film.
No.
And when, you know, again, the distinction needs to be drawn about folk horror, that just because something is distinctively about one culture doesn't make it folk horror. Folk horror doesn't just mean regional horror. And I think that's more the case of that. And you could say, well, okay, but it does have the generational battle. But that's just Japanese film in general, because of the feudal system dying out, and then World War II.
Yeah.
Almost every type of Japanese film has the old and the new at that point in Japanese cinema. I mean, it's an interesting film, and it's a good film. There's definitely a lot of exploitation in it. You can almost see again, he's just made the films that are definitely exploitation films, the female scorpion film. So you can see that he's probably got an eye on selling it to different markets, and probably a better eye on it than a lot of the distributors. But I don't think it's ultimately terribly successful, appealing to outside sensibilities. I think it's too bizarre to reach outside of Japan without being, I don't know, Roger Corman re-edit or something would need to kind of translate to a drive-in audience. And it's a good Japanese film, but I don't think it could have just played in America, for example, wide. I think it would have to be redone. It's just too odd. You know, I mean, there's even little bits that reminded me of like Mystics in Battle. You know, the flying dog head could easily be the flying guts in Mystics in Battle.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. I found all that stuff like wildly entertaining. I felt very sorry for the dog that was getting buried alive, but
no, I mean, I kind of like it, but I just don't think that, you know, I don't think it's exploitation enough to sell to that crowd.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't think it's prestige enough to sell to that crowd either. Kind of falls halfway.
I get that. I understand that it is a mishmash, but because for some audiences it is going to be a tougher sell. It's more for some people watching this film, it may be more of a curio and like, oh, that was interesting, didn't entirely work in these areas. But for my sensibilities, I like all of the different mishmash parts, because I like films that are like wild and zany, where the film last 20 minutes of this film go, because it's just nuts. And then the beginning of the film is the more folk horror-ish element to it, and then the bits with the villagers and all the city people is more, yeah, the clashing of, you know, cultures within one country and stuff like that. So it's got that, I don't know what I'm trying to say basically, but it's just, I found that all the elements gelled really well together, and on top of the visuals and the exploitation elements, which I do enjoy, it entirely worked for me. Like I really enjoyed this, and there's a really cool booklet in here by Tom Mez. He wrote the book in here, and he's like one of my favorite writers on, well, in general on film, but also obviously he's a expert on Japanese cinema. So he's been sort of instrumental in bringing a lot of these films that have been rarely seen outside of Japan to, you know, Western audiences. He's like obviously working with Fran at Radiance and stuff as well. So we're getting some of these, I'll bring his name up again, like Taiketo Films, which has been a revelation this year for me. But moving on from that, it's just his writing and insight into what was going on regionally as well in Japan. They're trying to unify everything, because everything was still fragmented, and even people didn't consider themselves Japanese. They could consider themselves like the region they were from in Japan. They didn't see the larger picture of like they're living in an archipelago, like on an island. They're all in the same area, same geographical part of the world, but even then there was like distance between people.
This is why they keep getting attacked by giant lizards. You know, this lack of coherency that they have is why they're susceptible as a race. Yeah, you're right about Tom. He's a great writer. I think it's very telling that it's out from Mondo of all labels.
Okay.
I think it's the perfect label for it, because Mondo almost specialise in nuts. Doesn't quite work, but it's still cool kind of movies. Just get a million of those. And I think that's probably the best place. It wouldn't work in, say, the folk horror box set at all.
No. I appreciate it was mentioned in the documentary, because it does have elements of folk horror, but like there's lots of films that have bits of different genres that they lend from, you know. And so I don't even know what genre I would call this. Like it's horror, but then it's like social commentary drama, because there are lots of bits in the film where there is no supernatural happenings going on. You know, there's long stretches where it's just more, it's just the characters as they're going about everything in their lives, and the psychology of dealing with someone who's like ostensibly committed suicide, as you could say, from this, you know, possession from the dog god. But then it's like, is it real, or is it just this woman who's gone mad, you know? And the spiritual side is just like a manifestation of things. I don't know. I loved it. I was thoroughly impressed with this. I loved the way it looked. I loved the acting in it, and very nice presentation as well. It's from a 2K transfer, so it's not a 4K restoration or anything, but it's from the film negative, and I just thought it looked stunning. And obviously these ones go out of print really quickly. These are like the red case ones, so these are like for the people who want to support Mondo, Macabro straight away, and they're sort of like, I don't mind the marketing for this, because I tend to not, I don't mind if I don't get a red case on something, especially something I feel I can wait on and stuff. But like when you do get the red cases, they do look nice, and they're like numbered on the back, so you like, you know, you've got most of these are like 1,500 copies or something like that, because Mondo are still a very small label compared to a lot of the other ones. You know, they only release like a handful of things a year. They'll have maybe like 3 or 4 announcements. They've been doing a few more recently, but when I first started collecting Blu-rays more heavily, they were releasing things very sporadically, and it was sort of like a mini event within the people that support them. A lot of the stuff I'm like, I've never heard of that, but that's where my tastes are leaning, or where my buying is more going towards these days. Like my budget is very restricted at the moment, and when I do pick up things when I can, I'm more inclined to be, you know, buying a couple of discs from Mondo and taking a chance on those, because I know I'm going to be seeing something that I haven't seen before, and it's going to be weird. Yes, it may not work completely, although I do think this one did, but there are some from Mondo Macabro that I have bought, and they've been interesting, but they sort of failed for me. But this one really worked for me, and it's something I'm very happy to have in my collection. And
yeah, I mean, I know they were
watched again.
They were disappointed by sales of the Bollywood box set, and they were let down by the speed of sales of the Paul Nashi 4K, which they hoped would be a kind of ongoing range, but it sold very slowly in comparison to previous Paul Nashi releases. So yeah, such a small label that if just 2 or 3 releases don't do as well as quickly as they need them to, then it's trouble. So yeah, it's the kind of label that people should support more, even if they think there's just half a chance to like what they're going to get. But
and
hey,
like,
you know,
not to bring too much of the monetary thing into it, but like, as these are limited, if you buy one of these and support the company and you try it out and you don't like it, like you can really recoup your money, because some of these go for stupid on the secondary market. Like I there's some of them that are sealed on there on like eBay and stuff, and I don't like that, because obviously people have bought this red case to flip it. But like, if you buy this and watch it and you don't like it, and obviously it's open, you sell that on the secondary market, and you can really recoup a lot of money back on that, to maybe buy more discs from Mondo Macabro in the future, and then the ones that you do like, you can keep them on your shelf and you know, enjoy for future viewings. But
yeah, I mean, you know my feelings on buying labels rather than buying films. I don't like it. I think it just encourages cult mentality and OCDness. And, I don't like it. But for a company like them, I think it's excusable, because they have an identity, and it's not an identity where you can just say it's Japanese exploitation films of the 70s or anything, but it's an identity of interesting oddities that you wouldn't get from Severin, probably. You might get some from Vinegar Syndrome, but you wouldn't get all. You definitely wouldn't get it from Criterion, and I can't really think of anybody in the UK who would put out a lot of their stuff at all. Can't think of anybody. Can you? Well, I can't see that.
Maybe Shameless, because they've done a couple of the ones that Mondo have put out, but
and then even Shameless are so sporadic these days.
Yeah, exactly. So, very small operation, it seems.
So yeah, they're a label that I think, yeah, if you have to support a label just to support them, then they're the kind of ones to do it from. Not Criterion with a billionaire owner. They don't really need your support. So yeah.
Well, thanks, Davey. It's been a pleasure.
Now we're going to talk Battlestar Galactica.
But we'll save that for another video. That's a nice looking box.
That's everything Battlestar Galactica ever.
What, like even the OG series?
Especially the OG series.
Yeah, I've never seen it. Is it?
OG.
It's not as. Is it as good as the new series?
No, it's completely different.
No, of course it's not.
But this has got Caprica. It's got all the TV movie versions. It's got the spin-offs. Yeah.
That's nice. Is that a French set?
French. It was only released in France.
Oh, right.
You can get a UK version, but the UK one doesn't have the original show or Battlestar 80.
Right.
And the American version doesn't have any of the spin-offs. It's just got the actual show, but it's not got Caprica. So France is the only country. I don't know how this has turned into a Battlestar video all of a sudden, but France is the only country that got the complete thing. of every Battlestar ever.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm going to do a rewatch of that at some point. Me and my partner are watching a few things at the moment, but it will take us a while to get those resolved. But maybe, I know it sounds like it's a way off yet because we're in August, but like in the new year, maybe it'll be her first watch. But I've seen Battlestar through twice before, just the new series. I've watched it twice through. So, but I'm itching to watch it again. So,
and then they're bringing back Ted Lasso. I was just reading before we came on.
What?
Yeah, Ted Lasso's coming back.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. That seems like such a terrible idea. What is it going to be with him in the States?
No, I think it's going to be a continuation with Roy Kent managing the team.
But then why it's not going to be called Ted Lasso anymore, is it?
I guess they're going to maybe change the name to Richmond or something.
Yeah.
But to me, the minute I read that, I thought, oh.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Season 3 was already stretching my love of that show.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Awesome.
Anyway, we kind of went into television all of a sudden.
Yeah. No, did you see
Coronation Street last night?
What's that? I have no idea what that is.
You don't know what Coronation Street is? No?
I do. No, I have not. I didn't watch it. No, Davey, I don't. The only soaps I watch are like the mid-season 2 of Twin Peaks is the only soap I watch.
There was a very good episode of The News on last night. It was the I'm waiting for the complete box set though. So
wow, that's going to be a hefty one. That one, you might need a whole other house to acquire that one. But you know, you got to support what you love.
Well, season 1 and 2 are quite good, so you know, season 3 of The News is pretty good.
Wow, this got surreal.
It didn't.
Yeah. Right then, I'm going to go now.
Happy bank holiday, everybody.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your time. This is probably going to go up in a few days after the bank holiday's done. So
we've not made videos in a long time. Can you tell?
Yeah, I'm so just rambling now. Anyway,
1967's The Sorcerers, directed by Michael Reed.
I'm going to cut you off now. No. So everyone, if you've made it this far past all the ramblings about TV shows and stuff, thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment down below if you've seen any of these films and what you think of them and just what you've been watching in general recently. If you want to reach out and talk to me about that film that Davey's holding in his hand, I'm happily talk to you about it because I found it fascinating. But yeah, until next time, everyone, I have no idea when that's going to be, but I'd like to do more of these things and make a video at some point. But, you know, time, effort. It's been a pleasure, Davey. Say goodbye to everyone. Wave and say goodbye to everyone, please. There you go.